Hello, you're listening to Abstract AF and I'm Sneha Jaiswal. In this episode, we are going to talk about the 2021 Netflix film Pagglait starring Sanya Malhotra in the lead role. Malhotra plays a young woman called Sandhya who is widowed just 5 months after her arranged marriage, and she finds it hard to mourn the death of a man she barely knew.
संध्या ठीक है? हाँ, अब सबको उसी की फिक्र है बस.
Directed and written by Umesh Bisht, this movie was released on the streaming platform on March 26th, and while I did write a longish film review on our website abstractaf.in on the same day, I thought a podcast episode about what makes the film click would be nice too. So I'm going to talk about 10 things that set Pagglait apart from the usual run-of-the-mill Bollywood films. Number 1. The first thing that strikes you about the film is the fact that the protagonist is unable to shed a tear over the demise of her husband. And while the viewer slowly understands why, the plot also makes one reflect on how the excessive loud wailing isn't necessarily everybody's way of grieving. And sometimes people just reconcile to the inevitability of an end. It's not like Sandhya is so overwhelmed or shook by the sudden demise of her husband that she finds herself at a loss of emotion. It just doesn't affect her too much. Which brings me to point number 2. This film de-romanticizes the notion of Indian arranged marriages. While there are obviously a lot of Bollywood films that are all about grand notions of love and the eventual unification of the leads into holy matrimony, there are actually very few films that actually look deep into how arranged marriages are all about luck. Some couples click, some couples don't. After the death of her husband, Sandhya realizes she didn't know anything about him. So when she finds a picture of a pretty woman in his closet, she's quite surprised. And that brings me to number 3, something that we rarely ever see in Bollywood films. Two women who were in a relationship with the same man, even though at different times, being friends. So when Sandhya finds the picture of a woman in her husband's wardrobe, she gets incredibly curious about who the lady is, and the two end up meeting a few times.
हमें लगता था हमारी तरह आस्तिक को भी प्यार करना नहीं आता, लेकिन जानना चाहती हूँ सब कुछ. हम उसकी बीवी थी यार, बस कुछ पुरानी यादें मांग रही हूँ.
They almost develop an amicable friendship and see each other over coffees. All this while Sandhya attempts to understand her late husband. Usually Bollywood films use the other woman trope to build drama, have some catfights or screaming matches. But in Pagglait, we see two grown women interact like two grown women should, with dignity and poise. And that was refreshing to see. Number 4 is the portrayal of positive female friendships. In India, a lot of people joke about how Bollywood has made us believe that a man and a woman cannot be best friends.
दोस्तों सुना क्या एक जवान लड़का और एक जवान लड़की कभी दोस्त हो सकते हैं?
But another fact is also true. Our movies tend to send a message that two women cannot be best friends either. In fact, that's not just limited to Bollywood. Hollywood is even worse. Most movies or series will show us two women characters who are great friends, but one of them ends up betraying the other in some or the other horrible way. And if there's no betrayal involved, one of the girlfriends is just an unlikable person. Thankfully, there is none of that girl drama in Pagglait. Sandhya, the protagonist, has a very supportive best friend who stays with her for all 13 days of mourning that are traditionally observed in Hindu funerals. Her friend Navya puts up with all of Sandhya's whims and mood swings and continues to stay by her side through thick and thin. Number 5. The director uses Navya's character to show the subtle ways in which religious intolerance works. While Sandhya's in-laws do not say anything about Navya staying in their house, they express their intolerant mindset in little ways, like serving a food that's different from everybody else or serving her tea in a different cup. It's too bad that Navya's character actually has very little to do or say in the movie. But well, never said this was a perfect movie, did I? Anyway, moving on to number 6, which again has something to do with religion. Because the story unfolds during a 13-day funeral period, there is obviously a lot of Hindu rituals and superstitions shown in the film. A lot of it would be relatable to an Indian audience and possibly amusing for a foreign one. While the director plays it safe and doesn't really do anything to mock or condemn archaic religious practices, he does show the viewer how incredibly commercial religion and religious practices have become. Priests are portrayed as opportunistic vultures preying upon the dead, or well, the relatives of the dead. Again, this is done very subtly through Small scenes. If you do wish to see a movie that is scathingly critical of self-styled Indian godmen who loot the common man in the name of religion, do watch the 2012 film Oh My God starring Akshay Kumar. Getting back to Pagglait. The seventh thing that works for Pagglait is the fact that there is no idealistic character in the film. Everybody is flawed in their own way, at least the characters that get enough space in the film. Sandhya is no ideal heroine. Despite having a master's degree, she marries a boy her parents choose for her and then resigns to the life of a dependent housewife. She seems to have no aspirations of her own, at least not in the beginning of the story. Her in-laws are grieving the loss of their young son, but at the same time they have materialistic concerns that make them desperate enough to resort to petty tactics. Sandhya's own mother is also shown with some negative shades, and I don't want to go into details because I don't want to give any spoilers, so watch the film and you will know what I mean. Number 8 is perhaps one of the strongest factors of the film, and that's the petty and almost hilarious family politics that plays out during the funeral over money. Sandhya's in-laws and family find out how she is the sole beneficiary of her late husband's life insurance policy. So she is the inheritor of 50 lakh rupees. That's quite a fortune. And this is not a spoiler, this is already revealed in the trailer of the film.
उन्होंने 50 लाख का इंश्योरेंस करवाया था। सिंगल नॉमिनी है, उनकी धर्मपत्नी संध्या गिरी।
Anyway, until the family was unaware of this, most relatives in the family weren't even interested in Sandhya's fate. But once the money comes into the picture, all that changes. The scheming and conspiracies within the family over the money was fun to watch, and it's something that happens in a lot of families around the world. Number 9. The director squeezes in several little subplots to carry Sandhya's story forward, and one of them is a little romance between two teenaged cousins who are attending the funeral. Now, this is something again that is very commonplace in India, but not reflected in a lot of our films. So basically, Umesh Bish, the director, fits in a lot of little scenes that will be relatable to a lot of viewers. The last thing that works for Pagglait is the use of an invisible protagonist, and that's Astik, Sandhya's husband. Not once is the viewer shown Astik's face, not in photos, not in flashbacks, despite the fact that almost everything happening in the movie involves Astik. He's constantly spoken of, elaborate ceremonies are observed for his final journey, but the director never gives a face to the name. And I really think that works for the movie, because it makes Sandhya's alienation to this man who she barely knew even more real. Just like she didn't really know him, we the viewer also never get to have a tangible image of Astik. So yeah, those are some of the things that make Pagglait really work.
जब लड़की लोग को अकल आती है ना तो सब उन्हें पगलैट ही कहते।
There's obviously the whole feminism and women empowerment bit to the film, but I'm sure a lot of people have already spoken and written about that in their reviews, so I'm not going to go into that. Pagglait might not be a grand film that will change your life, but it's a lovely little movie that you must watch if you find time. And that's all for this episode. Hope you enjoyed listening. Talk to you in the next one.